At 6:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944, the ramp dropped on landing craft 91. Company A, 116th Infantry stepped into hell. 10 minutes later, 96 men out of 100 were dead or wounded. This is the story of the 10 minutes that almost ended D-Day. But to understand how 100 men vanished in 10 minutes, we need to go back 12 hours. To the moment when these soldiers, farmers, factory workers, teachers, prepared to cross the English Channel into the most fortified coastline in human history. Private Robert Sales, 19 years old from Bedford, Virginia, sat in the landing craft as it circled offshore. He couldn't see much through the spray, just the dark shapes of other boats, hundreds of them. The naval bombardment had started at 5:30. Shells screamed overhead, supposedly destroying German bunkers. The soldiers were told the beach would be a cakewalk. "You'll walk right in," their officers said. Sales gripped his rifle tighter. His hands were shaking. Not from cold, from knowing. Around him, 31 other men from Bedford sat in that same boat. Boys who'd grown up together, played baseball together, now heading to a beach in France together. What they didn't know was that Allied intelligence had missed something critical. The German 352nd Infantry Division, veteran troops from the Eastern Front, had moved into position at Omaha just weeks before. The beach wasn't defended by undertrained garrison troops. It was defended by killers. At 6:29 a.m., the boat's engine cut. They were 200 yards from shore. Sales heard the coxswain shout, "Ramp down in 30 seconds." His stomach dropped. Through the front of the boat he could hear it now. Machine guns. Hundreds of them. A sound like ripping cloth, but amplified, continuous, devastating. The ramp dropped at 6:30 exactly. Lieutenant Ray Nance, standing at the front, never made it off the ramp. Killed instantly. The second man fell into the first. The third into the second. Sales jumped into water over his head. 70 pounds of equipment dragged him down. He kicked frantically, broke surface, gasped for air. Around him, men were drowning. Others were hit before they could even swim. The water turned red. He could see the beach now. 300 yards of open sand. Beyond it, 170-foot bluffs. And on those bluffs, concrete bunkers with machine guns that never stopped firing. Sales made it to the beach. Somehow. He didn't remember swimming. He found himself behind a steel obstacle, bullets sparking off the metal inches from his face. To his left, Sergeant Thomas Valance tried to rally men forward. "Move. We gotta move." A burst of machine gun fire cut him down mid-sentence. To his right, Private John Schenck lay in the surf, both legs shattered. He was calling for his mother. The tide was coming in. In 20 minutes he would drown. Sales looked around for his officers. Dead. His sergeants. Dead. His squad leader. Dead. It had been 6 minutes since the ramp dropped. Of the 32 men from Bedford who had been on his boat, Sales could see 4 still moving. 4 out of 32. The others were in the water, on the sand, or dying behind obstacles just like this one. This wasn't war. This was execution. 300 yards to the right, Captain Taylor Fellers landed with another company. He made it 3 steps off the ramp before a bullet hit him in the throat. He fell backward into the water and didn't come back up. First Sergeant Raymond Strachny took command. "Follow me," he shouted, trying to lead men off the beach. He made it 15 yards before machine gun fire nearly cut him in half. The beach was now carpeted with bodies. Landing craft burned. Equipment floated in the surf. Wounded men screamed for medics who were themselves wounded or dead. Could anyone survive this? Could the invasion succeed? By 8:30 a.m., the attack had stalled completely. Thousands of men huddled behind the seawall at the base of the bluffs, pinned down, unable to advance, unable to retreat. On the command ship USS Augusta, General Omar Bradley watched through binoculars. He turned to his staff. "We're being slaughtered on that beach," he said quietly. He was considering evacuation, abandoning Omaha entirely. If he gave that order, D-Day would fail. The invasion would collapse. The war might be lost. On the beach, Brigadier General Norman Cota landed with the second wave. He was 51 years old. Too old for this. But he walked the beach anyway, under fire, looking for men who could still fight. He found a group of Rangers huddled behind a destroyed tank. Young men, frozen, their eyes wide with shock. Cota looked at them. Then he did something remarkable. He smiled. "Gentlemen," he said calmly as bullets cracked past his head, "we are being killed here on this beach. Let's move inland and be killed." One Ranger stared at him. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm the Assistant Division Commander of the 29th Division," Cota replied. "And I'm telling you to get off this goddamn beach." He turned and started walking toward the bluffs. Alone. Unarmed except for a pistol. The Rangers looked at each other. Then one by one they stood up and followed him. What happened next saved D-Day. Not grand strategy. Not overwhelming firepower. Just small groups of men making impossible choices. A sergeant named Clarence Colson found a gap in the wire. He led 12 men up a narrow ravine, crawling on their bellies, throwing grenades into German positions. Private First Class John Pinder made 8 trips across the beach under fire, carrying communications equipment. Shot once in the leg, then in the shoulder, then in the chest. He kept going. On his 8th trip he collapsed and died. But the radios got through. Combat engineers crawled forward with Bangalore torpedoes, 30-foot tubes of explosives. They shoved them under the barbed wire and blew gaps wide enough for men to pass. Infantry followed, scrambling up the steep bluffs, using every crater, every fold in the ground. They threw grenades into bunkers. They shot German soldiers who tried to surrender because they couldn't spare men to guard prisoners. It was vicious. It was desperate. It worked. By noon, the first groups reached the top of the bluffs. By 1 p.m., they'd punched through the German defensive line. By 2 p.m., engineers were clearing paths for tanks. The Germans, isolated and surrounded, began falling back. By evening, Omaha Beach was secure. But the cost was unspeakable. Over 2,000 casualties. More than all the other beaches combined. In Bedford, Virginia, population 3,200, 22 men from Company A were dead or missing. The highest per capita loss of any American community on D-Day. The town would receive 19 telegrams over the next month, each one beginning with the same 4 words, "The Secretary of War regrets." Robert Sales survived. He fought across France, through the Battle of the Bulge, all the way to Germany. He never talked about D-Day. When people asked, he would just shake his head and walk away. Norman Cota received the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions on Omaha Beach. He later said, "I didn't do anything special. I just refused to die on that beach." John Pinder received the Medal of Honor posthumously. His citation reads, "His courageous determination and personal bravery were a signal inspiration to all who observed him." 10 minutes. That's all it took to nearly destroy Company A. 10 minutes of machine gun fire on a beach in Normandy. But those men didn't die in vain. Their sacrifice bought time. Time for the second wave. Time for engineers to clear obstacles. Time for leaders like Cota to rally the survivors. Without those first 10 minutes, there would have been no breakthrough. Without the breakthrough, there would have been no liberation of Europe. Today, if you visit Omaha Beach, you'll see the American cemetery overlooking the sand. 9,000 white crosses stretching toward the horizon. Many of them mark the graves of men who died in those first 10 minutes. The French still call it Bloody Omaha. They remember. The world remembers. Because on June 6, 1944, 100 men stepped off a boat into hell. And only 4 walked away. What D-Day story should I cover next? The D-Day disaster that saved the invasion? Or they climbed 100 feet under fire? The guns weren't there? Drop your vote in the comments. And subscribe for more stories of impossible courage.